because right now we need to talk to Rupert Lowe, Reform MP, of course, for Great Yarmouth. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I must say, you guys, the five, I mean, I don't know if you've got a nickname for yourselves as not the Magnificent Seven or the Magnificent Five or something, but you're creating quite a stir in Parliament, and I'm enjoying every single minute of it. Every time you get up to speak, there's a sort of collective groan from the government benches, which makes me smile every single time it happens.
Well, the Labour Party groaned when I opened my budget speech, which you'll be interested to know was cut from 8 minutes to 5 minutes and then to 3 minutes, so I had to rewrite it 3 times.
Right.
But I opened it with, this is a budget of the public sector, by the public sector, for the public sector. And there were howls from the other side.
Very good. Now, you've also gone after them now because you want a series of statistical information to come your way. And you've made some quite interesting inroads into it, haven't you? Trying to find out precisely what is going on in this country, the stuff that they don't want us to know, the stuff that they don't want to tell us, you know, about, you know, criminal-based nationality statistics, you know, who's living where, who's doing what, the sort of thing that is our bread and butter, really.
Well, the key issue here, Mike, is that as an MP, which is partly the reason I think why they didn't want us in Parliament in the first place, but now we've got the bridgehead, we can use this. You're allowed to ask 20 questions a day of the government.
Yes.
And the civil service. So I've been using my 20 questions a day, but you'll be unsurprised to hear that, number one, they very often try and amend the question to change the meaning of it, and number two, I think hopefully we've now cracked that, and we're having a regular meeting with the Speaker's office to try and ensure that is resolved in a friendly manner. But the other issue is that they very often refuse to give us statistics by nationality, whether that's on crime or prisoners or indeed you know, benefit claimants or any form of sort of question that we ask. They say they don't have the data. Well, we know, because we've got a DWP insider, we know that they collect the data.
Right.
And frankly, I think the public, and certainly I, at the age of 67, having just taken on this new career, I just don't think it's acceptable that an elected member of Parliament who asks a question is not given a straight answer. If the data exists, then I should be given that data.
Yes.
But as you can probably see, I'm having to ask various circular questions and then try and reach conclusions and challenge the government to tell me if I got it wrong. Well, that isn't the right way to be doing it, but it's the only way we have any hope of understanding what damage this legal and illegal immigration is doing to the basis of our country.
Exactly.
And as you know, other countries are very open and transparent about it, and the basis of any functioning democracy is free speech, as we all rudely agree on, and also transparency. So where is this data? I am demanding it, and I'm going to go on demanding it. And I think everybody in the media should equally be demanding it, because otherwise we have to base our assumptions on what we think is the case rather than what actually is the case.
Yes, and I mean, he's not my favourite MP, but Neil O'Brien's been doing some work on this as well. He was, of course, the guy who was in the middle of the COVID panic, and he was in the cabinet when he was putting journalists' names down on registers because he didn't like what they were saying. But he's managed to make some inroads into getting some information out about these guys. But this is exactly what happened to the press, actually, back when I was working in newspapers, when Tony Blair was in charge, because he dreamed up the Freedom of Information Act, which everybody went, oh, well, that's good, that means we'll have freedom of information. Actually, no, it was a cunning plan to actually not give out any information at all. Because up in Scotland, where I was working at the time, you'd put in a freedom of information request to the Scottish Parliament, and they'd come back and say, oh, sorry, that's going to cost us too much money to research, so we can't do it. And you would be stymied at every single position that you took.
Well, as you know, our parliamentary democracy is based on the elected MPs. They should be omnipotent. That's what they're elected to, is represent their constituencies. What's happened is, as you mentioned, Tony Blair and the wretched Gordon Brown, they've undermined our unwritten constitution by basically setting off these quangos. And as you quite rightly say, these quangos, the quasi-national government organisations, they actually take power from Parliament. And then armed with things, as you say, like the Freedom of Information Act or this GDPR nonsense, which we all have to put up with every day, which is emanated in Europe. I mean, no business can function, Mike, because people can hide people can hide. Sorry, my phone's fallen down.
Don't worry.
People can hide behind, a raft of this nonsensical rubbish, which, gives them an opportunity to obfuscate, which is what we don't want from our government. I think we want transparency, we want honesty, and then the people can make a decision for themselves. But I think increasingly people are becoming, and I'm much shorter, probably fused than a lot of people. I think the British people are very, very patient, very, very decent. But I think even the most decent, patient people are beginning to say, well, what is going on? Why are we not getting transparent information about how the country is operating?
Right. And what is their reason for concealing the truth as well? Because that's an interesting question. I don't know why. I suspect I know what the answer will be, but what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's the failure of this post-war multicultural experiment, Mike, which is worrying them. And, Suella Braverman, as you know, tried to open it up so there was more transparent information. Yvette Cooper's trying to close it down. I think that's probably the main reason. But what I also can't understand is we've got, the spouses of people who are married to people in this country want to come and live here. We make it incredibly hard for them to come, and yet we open our arms to these young men who come in, throw their passports overboard, are welcomed with both arms, and then with open arms, and then ultimately that they're accepted into our country and sent off to destabilize various parts of the country where crime is low, and then crime suddenly becomes high. Then you can't get your data on crime. Therefore, people can't make a valid judgment on what's going on. So I think we need a total rethink of this. And the problem is, after this wretched landslip Labour victory, I call it a landslip, it wasn't a landslide, they won with, I think, the lowest percentage of the vote since 1928. So I think it's a landslip election victory. And we've got some very low-grade people on the front benches. I think of the 26 of them, only 3 of them have got any business experience at all. And I would argue that those 3 have limited business experience.
Yes, I think that's right. And just let me draw your attention. I don't know if you've seen the Telegraph this morning, their front page story about Alison Pearson, who's very much a friend of our station. Julie Hartley-Brewer is going to speak to her on her show, I believe, this morning. She's revealed that the police visited her at her home on Sunday, Remembrance Sunday morning at 10:40. 2 police officers turned up and started talking to her about a tweet that she'd made some 12 months earlier. They wouldn't tell her which tweet it was. They wouldn't tell her who had complained, but they said they needed to investigate it and talk to her about whether or not a hate crime may have been committed. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Well, it is quite worrying, actually, Mike. I mean, I'm just waiting for a knock on my door. I haven't had one yet, but I'm waiting for it.
Right.
I mean, we've got, dangerous prisoners being released early from prison. Then we have grandmothers who make an ill-judged remark on Twitter being sent to prison. And then we have people like Alison Pearson, who I think is a very good lady, who does her best to expose things that need exposing. And the police wasting their time knocking on her door, threatening her with all sorts of nonsense. So I mean, have we lost the plot, Mike? That's the question.
Yes. Well, I think the police certainly have lost the plot because they were supposed to be not doing this anymore. The whole idea of these non-crime hate incidents was supposedly coming to an end. They were told that they shouldn't be investigating this stuff anymore.
But I do feel for the police a bit, Mike, and as you know, we're doing quite a lot to try and help them, the Manchester police in particular, who did a very good job up at Manchester Airport and are now being vilified. I think you have to blame the bosses, as usual, a bit like, you were talking earlier about Justin Welby, who's now resigned. I mean, I personally think that's a very good thing. I think he's been a very poor Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yes.
So I think you have to blame the people at the top who fly the LGBTQ plus flags and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah.
So honestly, we've got to get some reality back. I think we're heading for a cataclysmic downturn economically. I'm amazed, I think we're rather like the man who's just gone over the cliff edge and we haven't started to fall yet. But this budget is so damaging to the structure of the country. I think Rachel Reeves has, with her taxes, not just on farming, but also on small family businesses, she's aiming to break what I call the backbone of the nation of shopkeepers, which is the essence of what Britain is. and create a dependency culture, finish off the job that Gordon Brown started, which she hopes will vote Labour all the time because they throw them all these benefits. So I don't want a country like that, Mike. I want a country based on the individual, based on enterprise, based on freedom, based on all the things that allow the ingenuity of the British people to flourish. I don't want this Marxist dogma and nonsense, which seems to be increasingly pervading our country.
It really does. Rupert, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. A voice of reason. Rupert Lowe, Reform MP for Great Yarmouth there, trying to get information out of the government, and he will succeed in doing it. He will get there, but it's going to be difficult. It is difficult.